Khoi?
Yeah, good evening.
Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's proceed with the continuation of our lesson today. But of course, before we are going to continue that, I want you to watch the video first in order for us to have further idea or knowledge on how we are going to interpret and read the data, okay, and analyze graphs and charts. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So let's try to watch this one. Okay, I hope you can be able to see it, Koi. Can you see it?
I
Yeah. Okay, let's start now.
Hi, and welcome to the video on basics of data
Can you
analysis
hear
and
that?
interpretation.
yeah, I can hear
Yeah.
clearly.
Okay.
As you probably know, data analysis and interpretation is a major part of any scientific investigation and an important life skill. On a daily basis, we utilize data to generate knowledge, and we use that knowledge to take action. In this video, you will look at common representations of data and best practices for analyzing and interpreting that data. To be clear, when we say analyzing, we mean to make sense of the data. When we say interpret, we mean to make meaning of it. In this video, we'll look at 5 common representations that are shown here. And we'll start with the table. A data table shows the relationship between 2 or more variables. And it's useful for collecting and organizing data. Most investigations will utilize a data table to collect and organize the data. And the way that that is done is headers or labels are used for the columns, which are the parts of the tables that go up and down, and the rows. This data table does not have headers for the rows which go across, but it does have headers for the columns. You can use data tables to identify trends and patterns, but not as visually as appealing as other representations. So oftentimes the information in a table is transferred into another representation. The next representation we'll look at is a pie chart. Pie charts show numerical proportions, and that's useful for comparing. So for this example, we have favorite type of movie. We can utilize this pie chart to identify what was the most popular type of movie. The answer for that is the romance movies, and we know that because a larger slice of the pie is dedicated to romance. One downside to a pie chart, though, is you cannot use it to identify patterns if you just have one pie chart. If you have more than one pie chart, you can use those to identify patterns. The next type is a bar graph. There are 2 bar graphs shown here. The one on the left is a horizontal bar graph because the bars are going in a horizontal fashion. The one on the right is a vertical bar graph because the bars are going in a vertical fashion. Bar graphs show relationship between 2 or sometimes more variables. They show discrete values. And what I mean by that is, in this example of what kind of pet do you own, 5 people, which is 5 being a discrete value, 5 people own a rabbit. Bar graphs like pie charts are very useful for comparing. For example, if you wanted to know which do people own more, cats or dogs, you can utilize this bar graph to determine that. Right, so more people own cats than dogs, and we know that because the bar here for cats is higher than that for dogs. We can also utilize the values. 7 people own cats and only 3 people own dogs. So by
Okay. Um, I should have to stop for a while with this one, and I'm going to explain to you. Actually, this one is also um, another kind or another technique on how are we going to write a bar graph. So the technique that we use in here is what we called horizontal bar graph. Okay? And this one is what we called vertical. But it's the same. So the representation of this one is just the same because it shows relationship between 2 variables. Okay? Okay, let's try to continue.
Comparison, we can answer that question. In addition, you can utilize certain bar graphs to find patterns, like group bar graphs, which show more than one bar graph in the graph, and also the stacked form of bar graph. If we look at the stacked example, which shows expenses by month, we can utilize this bar graph to identify the following pattern. As you notice, each month, the person who this bar graph is representing spent more money each month on rent than any other expense. And we know this because a larger portion of each bar is dedicated to rent, which is shown here in that blue, in the light blue. The next representation is a plot. Like bar graphs, plots show relationship between two or sometimes more variables. This data is depicted as points on the x and y axis, and sometimes those points are connected through lines. Plots are very useful for visualizing trends and patterns. When we say trends, we mean direction. So, for example, the ice cream sale plot shown at the top here, we can see that as the temperature, which is shown on the x-axis, increases, so do the sales. So that is a trend. It's showing a direction. Pattern is a repetition or something that you notice that repeats. For example, in the rainfall in Springfield plot shown here, the red line depicts rainfall in 1994 and the blue in 1993. We notice that in both plots, the rainfall decreases from July to August. If we had data for several more years, that would become a pattern because it repeats. The last type of bar graph is a histogram. Sorry, last type of representation is a histogram. I want to be clear, this is not a bar graph, although it looks like a bar graph. One quick way to tell that it's not a bar graph is that there are no spaces between the bars. If you look at a bar graph, and let's just quickly go back to the bar graph, we'll see that there's spaces between the
Yes.
bars. Histograms do not have that feature. So what does a histogram show? It shows distribution. And the best example of that is point distribution on an exam. So it a histogram is useful when you want to find the mean, which will be like the average, the median, which is the middle value, so the value between the highest and the low, the mode, which is the most common value. And in this histogram, the most common value uh, for points scored is between 50 and 60 because that's the highest.
Okay, I should have to stop for this particular presentation, Koi. Okay, actually, one of these days we are going to study the mean, the median, and the mode. Do you have any idea of what was this mean? When you say mean, median, and mode, do you have any idea with this?
Mm, I think mean it had the same meaning as average.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, that's why this particular type of graphs or charts is very useful in order for us to identify, let's say, for example, results of the exam. Okay. So we are going to use a histogram rather than a bar graph. Okay. So when we say mean, okay, that's the average. Meaning, if you try to solve the average grade that, or let's say, for example, what was the results, the average results of those who took up the exam.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be the mean. And then when you say the median, which is the middle value. So as we can see in here, so the middle value is 50 to 60. So those who got 50 to 60 points are okay, were 55 students, right? Because these are the number of students and then these are the number of points. So as we can see in here, there are a lot of students because they got 55, or 55 students got between 50 to 60 points. So that's the middle. Okay? And then when we say the mode, that was the most common value. So when you say common value, it shows that there are a lot of students who got that one. Okay, who got that particular scores or points. So that would be the most common value. Actually, we are going to study this one also because in an IELTS exam, you are going to do this one. Okay, sometimes you need to do the average, which is the mean. You are going to solve for the median, and you are also going to solve for the mode. So it's very important to know that one. Okay, so in using a histogram, not all graphs or charts can be used for that particular purpose because there would be other purposes for that. So, what do you think would be the best? Okay, the best charts and graphs you can be able to do in order for you to find or interpret that one easily, so you may apply that one because not all informations can be used the different types of charts and graphs. Okay,
Okay.
okay, so let's continue, Koi.
bar, and also the range. So our scores go somewhere between from 0 to 100. Now that we looked at the common types of representation, we're going to move on to best practices. We're going to speak about how we analyze and how we interpret. Analysis will be shown in red, and interpreting will be shown in blue.
Okay. I should have to go back in here. I just wanted to point out this one because this one is very, very important. Um, because later on, we are going to do also, we're going to analyze and we are going to interpret. So, why is it analyzing would be the first step before we can move on to the interpretation part? What do you think, Koi?
What?
What do you think? Why is it analyzation or the so-called analyze first before moving on to the interpretation part? Because we cannot interpret first before analyzing, right? So
Yes.
it should be analyzing first, and then after you analyze, you have to interpret that. So why that would be the steps that we need to do.
Because when we analyze first, we use we understand the deep meaning, and in all the two methods of playing, and we try with the specific information we are gathered, and then we try the perfect essay we have ever.
Okay. You said it very well, okay? Because in a certain interpretation of a certain data, graphs or charts, we need to analyze that first before we can be able to interpret that one. Okay? Because if you are not going to analyze that one, you might get the mistakes, right? Because you don't know what to do. So therefore, you need to analyze. But of course, in a real IELTS exam, Koi, there would be time limit. So do not focus much more on the analyzation part. Okay? Because if you are going to focus also on the analyzation part, you will going to stuck up in there, and there would be instances that you will going to have lack of time when it comes to the interpretation part. And that's the reason that there are a lot of students failed in an IELTS exam because of that, because they don't have preparation. Okay? So, as what I have said, you are very lucky because you have this particular lesson. Okay? Why? Because preparation is very needed before you are going to take the IELTS. Okay? Once you are ready, once we are done with the lesson, I'm sure you are ready to take the IELTS. Okay? Okay, that's why as you can see, we were stuck up in unit 1. Okay? So we are just in unit 1 and we wasn't able to finish unit 1 yet, right? Because I want you to do this as if we are doing the real IELTS exam. Okay, because I want you to experience this one. I want you to experience the real feeling on how you are taking the IELTS exam. Okay, that's why do not be confused if we are going to tackle this one at a time, because I don't want this, because this particular lesson, Koi, are very important because we are now on the preparation of the IELTS. Okay? On during the pre-IELTS, actually those are just the most important thing that we need to get in the pre-IELTS would be the grammar part, because we can be able to use that in here. So once you had already the foundation of the grammar, well, it's easy for you to analyze and it's easy for you to interpret data. Okay? Now, the red one in here is our part of the analyzation. Okay? So our part of the analyzation, and the blue parts in here are parts of the interpretation. Okay? So what are the parts of the analyzation? Can you read this one, Koi?
Grow yourself in context title.
Yes.
Every
So ground yourself in the context of that particular graphs or charts. So how are you going to ground yourself in that context? So
first,
we need to know the
the title
and
and the type of representation.
representation. So
Represent.
that means it's very important to take note of the title. So if you happen to see a graph or a charts, first thing you need to do is to analyze, and where you are going to point your eyes. Point that first on the title part. Okay? So no other thing that you need to do. Okay? When you read, when you receive already, let's say for example, your exam or your paper, all you wanted to look at first is the title, because that is the part of the analyzation. After looking at the title, you need to decide what type of representation is that. Okay, that's why we are studying different kinds of graphs. Okay, because in the interpretation part, you will going to tell something of that graph or charts. Let's say, for example, you have to mention what graph or charts use in that particular representation. Okay, so you can say the pie chart shows that. Okay? So it's very important to take note the type of representation, because you are going to mention that one in your answer. Is that clear? Okay. And then after that, the key information and features such as the labels, the axes, the
Mm.
units, and etc. So later on, as we are going to go back to our presentation for our PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to show you the labels, the axes, and the units. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. And then after that, the observation. So what are the parts of the observations in here? So it's the patterns, the
Trend.
trends, and
Trend.
the standouts. So when you say patterns, so you have to look at the patterns. Are the patterns increasing or decreasing? So you have to take note of that. Huh? Are the patterns trending? Okay. You can see that one most of the time. Is that the pattern? Okay? Or it stands out. So you have to take note of the what? The graphs that shows increase.
Yes.
Increase in what? Let's say, for example, the data shows about the increase of the sales in that particular year. So that standouts. Okay?
Correct.
Okay. So you have to take note of this. And then interpretation part. So in the interpretation part, as if you are telling a story. Okay? So what is the data telling you? So you are going to tell a story about that. Let's say, for example, the pie graph shows that there were increase of 5% on the year blah 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 rather than on the year blah blah blah. Okay?
Okay.
So you need to compare. Little things matters a lot in an IELTS Khoi. So you need to be very keen observant. So you need to observe little details because that little details would bring something to your answer. Okay? So you need as if you are telling a story. Okay? You are telling a story.
Yes.
So that is how we are going to interpret. And lastly, strengths and limitations of the data. It's very important also. What are the strengths? Okay, what are the strengths of that data? Okay, and what are also the limitations? It limits only with this particular representations. Okay, let's say for example, the number of movies, okay, that was what is one? It's popular. Okay, the number of movies that was popular, and then the people who watch that. Okay, and in a certain graph, like for example, a bar graph, we can be able to see a line. Okay, like for example, in here, Khoi, we can be able to see a line in here, right?
Yes.
Okay, the vertical line and then the horizontal line would be our axis. Okay? It was mentioned while ago, axis. Okay? And then labels would be this one.
Oh,
These are the labels. Okay?
okay.
These are the labels. That is in within the x-axis and the y-axis. So
Yes.
the x-axis is a line, okay, vertically. Okay? That is an x-axis. And the line horizontally, that would be the y-axis. And labels are all of this. So it's very important in the interpretation of the chart or graph. Okay? Okay. What else? So when we say units, okay? So number of units, let's say for example, these are also units. We can call also this one our units. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, and look at this one. This one is what graph is this?
Horizon.
Again?
Uh, the chart.
Yes, what kind of chart is this?
The gray chart.
The
I think it's the gray chart.
so this one is a bar graph. Okay? This one is a bar graph. We call this one as double bar graph. Okay? So bar graph. So what's the title of this bar graph?
Ah, yes, the favorite movie tied by grade level.
Yes. So just what I have to tell you that you need to do first, look at first the title. Okay? That's why the arrow in here shows that the bar graph says maybe if you are going to interpret already, huh? So you can also say the bar graph represents favorite movie type by grade
Yes.
level. Okay? And we can see in the bar graph that the blue one represented by grade 10 students, and the red one represented by the grade 11 students, with on the x-axis would be a number of students, right? Maybe. And then on the y-axis would
movie.
be who doing the action, okay, or watching movie action, watching a documentary movies, and watching a drama movie, and watching a sports movie. So we are comparing two comparisons of between the grade 10 and the grade 11.
Yes.
Okay? Okay. So let's try to continue,
Yourself in
Khoi.
the context. So you want to begin by reading the title of the data so you know what the data is
Yes.
showing you and identifying which representation. Is it a bar graph, pie chart,
Yes.
table? By knowing the representation, you'll know how to read the data. Once you've grounded yourself, you're going to look for key features, and that's going to depend on the type of representation.
Mm.
So, for example, in a data table like this,
Labels.
a key feature would be reading the headers on the columns or the rows. In plots and bar graphs, I would want to read the labels on the x and y axes.
Mm.
Another thing that's important to look at are the units that are used. That's a very important detail. And when you have something like a plot, this is one small note, we won't go into it here, but the shape of the graph is also important for plots because that will let you know which function best represents that data. In this case, these dots kind of look like a line, so I
Mm.
would say this is a linear function, and that could give me some really useful information later. The next thing we want to do is, after we have grounded ourselves and identified key features, is to start looking for trends, patterns, and any standout
Mm.
features. We've already talked about trends and patterns. So in the case for the ice cream sales, the trend we found was as the temperature increases, the number of sales
Yeah.
increase, and that's a trend.
So that's the
And the
trend.
pattern we found in the expenses by month is this person spent more money each month on rent than in any other expense.
Yeah. So that's the patterns.
Standout features are changes or anomalies. What I mean by change, if we look at the ice cream sales, there's only a small increase in the number of sales in this region of the graph
Mm.
with temperature. However, when we get to this region, there's a huge jump in the number of sales with the temperature. So
Yes.
that will be a change. The slope of this region of the graph is different than the first region. Anomalies are things that are out of the ordinary. So if you look at the expenses by month, you'll notice that the price for food is about the same in January, February, and April. Only
Mm.
March, the amount that
Increase.
was spent on food is much larger. It's almost double. Once you finish analyzing the data, now it's time to figure out, well, what is the data telling you? You need your
Yes.
story. Some sentence starters for this will be this data suggests or according to this data. So in the case of ice cream sales, we would say that this data suggests that as the temperature increases, the number of sales increase. Another thing that we can add on to this is that the sales increased much more when the temperature was between 98 and 103 degrees. So it increased more quickly.
Okay. I have to stop for this particular presentation, Koi. Now, in the interpretation part of the graphs or the charts, we can use the following phrases. Okay. This data suggests, or we can also say this, what do we call this one? What particular chart or graph is this?
Ice cream sales.
Okay, it's the title is an ice cream sales, but
Yes.
what particular chart is this or graph? So we are
Dog chart.
this one is the
The dog.
dot. Okay, so the dot chart. Okay,
Yes, you're
so
right.
this dot chart suggests that. So you are going to tell a story about this one now. Or we can also say, according to this data, blah blah blah, tell a story about that. Okay? Okay. Let's continue.
In addition to figuring out the story that the data is telling you, you also need to know the strengths and limitations of the data. And that's going to depend on how you want to use the data. For example, if I wanted to use this ice cream sale data to figure out how much ice cream I should order for my store, I could say that on warm days I definitely need to order more ice cream because that's what this data is telling me, since the number of sales increase with the temperature. However, I don't know if this data has been collected over days, weeks, months, years. So I may need to see more trials just to confirm that this is what I should do. Finally, if I'm ordering ice cream, I probably will have different flavors, and this data doesn't tell me which flavor is most popular on those days. So I will still need to do some more research. To quickly recap, we looked at the common representations of data: table, pie chart, bar graph, plots, and histograms. And then we went over best practices for analyzing and interpreting data. Starting with analyzing, which is making sense of the data, you want to ground yourself in the context by reading the title and identifying the type of representation. Then you will look for key information and features. Labels, axes, units, etc. are all key features that you will need to analyze the data. Finally, you want to make your observations. Look for patterns, trends, and anything that stands out. Once you've analyzed your data, you can make meaning of it by interpreting it. So, what's the story this data is telling you? And you also want to know the strength and limitations of the data based on the purpose that you're using the data. I hope you have found this video helpful. Have a quality day.
Okay, so that's the end of the video, Koi. Okay, so let's proceed to our presentation now. Okay, I hope you can see this one, Koi. Can you see it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now look at this one, Koi. For writing task one, you write a summary of information from graphs, tables, charts, or diagrams. But in this particular graphs, this one is what we call a pie chart or graph, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, look at this one. In an exam, in an IELTS exam, you should spend about 20 minutes on
On
these tasks. Okay? So whether you are finished or not, within that period of time, you need to submit your papers. Okay? Because there would be a time limit for that. But 20 minutes is a long time already. Okay? Using and interpreting the graph, once you know how to analyze, you know how to interpret. But if you don't know how to analyze and you don't know how to interpret, you will going to what? You are going to use so much of your time. Okay? Thinking of what you're going to do. Okay? So that's why let's try to look at the following questions and let's try to answer. Why? Because it will help you in determining on how you are going to interpret your answer by answering some questions. Okay? Now, in an IELTS exam, sometimes there are questions that you need to answer. Okay? But sometimes what you're going to do is you just have to write automatically a summary of that graph or chart. There would be no guide questions for that. Okay, Koi? Did you understand? Okay. Now, I am going to give you time to do this one for 20 minutes. Can we do this? Or would you like to do it next time? Okay, once you are familiar with this, or would you like to do it now? There would be guide questions. Okay? Now, after answering all the guide questions, tell us a story using your answer, using from the guides. Okay? I'll teach you that one. Okay? So all you need to do first is, okay, so I'm not going to give you a time limit at this time. Okay? So all we need to do is we just have to answer questions. Okay? We just have to answer the questions, and then after that, we have to tell a story about this one.
Okay.
Okay, Koy?
Yes.
Okay, so I will not going to give you time for this one now.
Yes.
Um, I want you to take your time first, but on our next activity, that's the time that I am going to give you time limit, because as if we are doing the real IELTS exam. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So
Yes.
can you do it now? You
Yes.
can do it on your paper, or you can do it, you can type that one also. Okay? You have to choose where you wanted to do it.
I think I'm going to type it.
Yeah, sure. So question number 1, what is the main reason for visiting New Zealand? Again, analyzation is very important. In answering questions, I already taught you that analyze first, and then after that, find the keywords. Okay? So what is us in here? Main reason for visiting New Zealand. So again, the main thought of question number 1 is main. So when you say main, what does it mean?
It means the more reason people visit New Zealand.
Very good. Okay. So that means the most number of visitors to New Zealand. Okay. So what was, or what were, or what was their reason? And the main reason for coming to New Zealand.
Can you turn back the ball chart for me, please?
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I'm most done.
You're done.
No, no,
Not
no.
yet.
Almost.
Almost done. Okay. So if you're done, you just have to send it to me so that I have to transfer that one to the presentation. Okay? And let's
Yes.
discuss. Are you done, Koi? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I forgot to turn on.
Again. Okay. For a while, I have to. Okay. Let's try to study the one that you did. Okay. So, for an objective outlook on this pie chart, almost nearly half of people to choose holiday as main reason, okay? As main reason to New Zealand. On the other hand,
Again.
percentage of visitors go to visit their relatives about 29% without fare. Okay?
No, 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 no. I mean, without fail. Yes,
Without?
fail. Uh, let me, uh, let me edit.
Yeah, sure.
Mm, where is it? Oh yeah, it's here. Yes, it is.
So you edited it?
Yes, I have it.
Okay.
Without
Just for
fail.
a while. On the higher percentage range of 20 without fail. Okay. So it's fail.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay. So next, only orange. This one is orange bar refers to 13% visitor coming to New Zealand for their business. So percentage of people who come to New Zealand for other reason in the exception of visiting relatives, holiday and business is what really meant. In general, more people is this more people? What do you mean?
More
Okay.
people would visiting New Zealand for pleasure.
Would okay, more people would
Yes,
okay would visit. Okay, now
New Zealand.
yeah. So you should have to write this one not in a contracted form, okay? You have
Okay.
to write it with the would, okay? Visiting New Zealand for pleasure rather than and okay, now this is the clue, Koi. In your answer, please do not write the acronym of that. So if you use New Zealand, you have to use also New Zealand in here, huh?
Yes,
Okay? Okay, so we have to correct this one.
I can see anything, guys.
Yeah, okay, for a while. What about this time? Can you see it now?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, okay, for a while.
Okay.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
And where are we now? Visiting New Zealand for pleasure
Break.
rather than
Working.
okay, for pleasure rather than working, owing to its majesty, physical features of an area like sea, landscapes, etc. Okay. Now, in this particular presentation of yours, Koi, can I make a some changes of it a little bit? Okay.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Look at this one. So almost nearly. Can you see it or not? You cannot, right?
I
Okay.
see.
I
I
have
cannot. I cannot see.
yeah, okay. So, can we omit the two in there? So, almost nearly half of people choose. Okay, so we have to omit the two. Okay? Okay,
Okay.
let's try. So, omit the two. Okay, wait for a while. Okay, wait. Okay.
Okay. Choose
Choose holiday as a holiday. Okay? So we need to put A. Okay, for a while, Koi, I have to check your and then as the main reason for New Zealand. And then the percentage, okay, the percentage visitors who go to visit their relatives is 29% without fail. Next, only the orange. Okay, so only the orange refers to 13% visitors visitors, okay, with an S in it, coming to New Zealand for their business. The percentage, okay? So the percentage of people who come to New Zealand for other reasons. So we need to put an S, okay? With the exception of visiting relatives, holidays, and business is what really meant. In general, more people would, okay, holidays, comma, okay, would visit New Zealand for pleasure rather than working owing to its majesty, physical features of the
Yes, very
sea, landscapes, etc. Okay, so this would be final. Actually, there would only be minor corrections, Koy. Okay? So I want again to congratulate you because there just only I just put some spice in it in order to be more clear. Okay? Just like
okay.
for example, for an objective outlook on this pie chart, almost nearly half of people choose A.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, so I just erase in here people to choose. So we I
Right.
erase in here two. So it's just only people choose a holiday as the main reason for. Okay, so that would be for New Zealand. So on the other hand, the percentage. So we have to put all the time. If we are using percentage, we need to use the. Okay, because that's the rule. Okay, on the other slides we are going to use how to use percentage and percent. Okay, okay, so the percentage of visitors, so we need an S in it, who go to visit their relatives is is about 29% without fail. Next, that's correct because you use a comma only, but I have to um, you have to use only small letter in here. Okay, only the orange bar refers to 13% of visitors coming to New Zealand for their business. So the percentage again, so I put in here the because we are talking about percentage. So the percentage of people who come to New Zealand for other reasons with the exception rather of visiting relatives, holidays, okay, relatives, comma, holidays, comma, and business is what really meant. So in general, this one is correct. More people would visit New Zealand for pleasure rather than working, comma, owing to its majesty, physical features of an area like the sea, landscapes, etc. Very good. Okay, this one is very good. This one is not long. Okay, and this one is you were able to summarize the content of this one. Okay, I thought you are going to answer all of the questions in here, but you were able to write automatically the summary. Okay, that's why I put in here analysis. So this one is not analysis yet, or this one is not the analysis, but this one is what we call the interpretation. Okay? So this one now is the interpretation.
Irritation.
Okay? So you interpret, wait for a while. Interpret. interpretation. Okay. So what you did was an interpretation already. Okay? Because in here we just have to use first the questions, and after answering all the questions, that's the time that we can be able to interpret the chart or the data. But in your case, you interpreted this one, and this one is very correct. This one is good, Koi. Okay? This one is a good writing already. So this one is a type of essay wherein you were able to capture all the.
The
Okay.
pie
Have
chart.
you able to include also other, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So you were able. Did you mention about the title?
Uh,
Okay.
that's
So
not
that's the only thing. Okay. So next time, don't forget to mention the title because they don't know where this graph came from if they don't know what's the title. Okay? So it's very important. Let's say, for example, for an objective outlook on this pie chart about. Okay, so we have to about what? What's the title again of the chart? About international visitors to New Zealand. Okay, colon and then reason for visit. Okay, just for a while. International visitors about international visitors to New Zealand, colon, okay, reason for visit. Okay, so that makes complete data. Okay, wow. Congratulations. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of you, Koi, because you did a good job. Okay? And I'm sure if you can be able to master, okay? Like for example, the use of a particular prepositions, okay? So maybe that would be the improvement that we are going to do, okay, in the next what is this one, next slides. Maybe we can be able to do a lot of writings, and we are going to inject a lot of uses of the prepositions. Okay. Okay, because there were only minor corrections. Okay,
yes.
I just sometimes I just put sometimes a spice. Okay, and that's it. It's just only a minor corrections. Okay. Okay, so I guess we're done today. So we are going to continue this one by when it will be by tomorrow, right?
Yes.
So we're going to meet by tomorrow. So another writing activity on the next. Okay. So we are going to do a lot of writing activity. Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today, Koi. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a night time. Bye for now.
Good God. Have a nice
Okay. Have a good night also. Okay? Bye
day.
bye.
Bye.